they said, hey, we'll give you $200.
It was $300.
$300 for one video. And I remember calling Steph up like, that's like a full day of substitute teaching. Are you kidding me?
Yep.
And I was like insane.
Hi, everyone. I'm Joe Galiese, the co-founder and CEO of Viral Nation, and I'm so excited and grateful to have the McCarty family here with me today, one of the most beloved families on YouTube and across social media. Now with over 13 million subscribers on YouTube and millions across other platforms, I guess we start off by congratulations. What an incredible opportunity that you both have seized, and thank you for trusting in Viral Nation and our teams to help you through that journey.
Absolutely. Thank you. It's definitely been a ride for sure. But we're happy we're here. We're happy with you guys too.
Awesome. Well, listen, I'm a dad. I got 3 babies. I have a 3-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 12-year-old. Both the older ones are girls. And I'm uniquely positioned as the CEO of Viral Nation to really be a part of the family and kids space. I'd love to understand how the last few years have been for you guys. And really, I know that Kevin, you made, a career decision a few years back, and, this is a really interesting and new world that you find your family kind of thrown into. Would love to just understand from you guys how it's been.
Yeah, absolutely. To get here, it's been quite an adventure. I was a teacher for 15 years prior to doing this, and I taught 12th graders. And I always had a hobby of shooting videos, and I started when TikTok started. I started my own page, and it was all teacher content. It was just teacher comedy, and it evolved to sporting things with my students. I would film sport events and stuff like that. And then COVID happened.
Wait, back up. His students convinced him to download TikTok, and I was like, "We are too old for
TikTok." That is true. That one of my students said, "Hey, Mr. McCarty, yeah, you should do TikTok." And I called up Steph at work when she was working, and I said, "Hey, should I do TikTok?" And she said, "You're too old to do TikTok." And I said, "Okay, well, I'm going to try anyway." And anyway, when COVID happened, and Stephanie was in a position where she was working in the healthcare industry at the time. So I was at home with a 6-month-old and a 4-year-old. And I was virtual teaching at the time too. So it was just a crazy, crazy time. And so to keep any sanity, we just started goofing around and we were filming videos. And by the end of the first pandemic, our TikTok started to take off, but I kept working. I'm the guy that wants security and all of that stuff. I kept working, and fast forward to 3.5 years ago, I was sitting outside with Stephanie, and Steph and I had week-long conversations of should I go for social media full time. And I had 8,000 subscribers at the time on YouTube. And I mean, there were so many no's where I just kept saying, no, I can't do it. And finally, thankfully, Stephanie convinced me to do it. And I made the leap, and it was insanely difficult, so super stressful, super scary. And luckily I had her by my side the whole time. And luckily, fast forward 3.5 years later, we're at 13.3 million subscribers, and it all took off. But I don't think anybody really understands in between all of the emotions that went through that entire process.
That fear that you were feeling was so real because, if you don't have the right folks working with you, or, God forbid you're at the wrong place at the wrong time, there's so many variables that play in being able to do that. So, congratulations again. It's really rare. When you think about it, it's a 1 in a billion thing that has happened, right? And that fear at the beginning with 8,000 subscribers, do you think, Kevin, was you making that decision to go at it full time what you think was the catalyst to the motivation that made it happen, or you think it would have happened either way?
No, there was definitely a moment. I received a brand deal. And the brand deal was actually the exact same amount as my teacher salary. And that was the thing that kind of tipped the conversation to saying, well, I can at least do this for a year and see what it's like.
Yeah.
So that was the turning point for sure.
That's
and I was still working too. So we weren't putting our family at risk of not being able to eat or have a roof over our head at that time. But, from my perspective, the part of the journey that's the coolest is how everything has streamlined from day one. So it started off with Cav just recording videos here and there. And then he'd, after he'd pick our daughter up from school, they'd record 2 real quick that he came up with that day or the day before. And fast forward to today, it's all streamlined exactly the way he writes, 50 sketches every time. We have our production crew come in. We have, I have everything staged and set up for each day with the prop lists. And so it's all organized and streamlined, right down to like the fact that his pen is tied to his clipboard. So we're not looking for the pen while we're filming. And, brand deals where the day before I'm spending hours making sure the product looks perfect and we understand it, so that we're not doing that and boring our daughter to death while we're filming this brand deal, or our son, so everything we've done for the last 4 years to like streamline each process and get stronger has just been really cool to see. And that's something no one really sees behind the scenes.
You have folks who stumble into this world and all of a sudden it's like, wow, we're here. And they're basically kind of winging it the whole time. And without that level of, let's call it professionalism and operational rigor and the thinking that you've put into it to address those things, that's when things become really cumbersome on the kids, or folks start to get really stressed out. And having the ability to essentially organize it like a business that the family can get around, they understand what's coming and what's going and et cetera, I think will lend itself really well to your family being able to maintain and continue to build on that success.
Their childhood experience is something that we've always got in front of us of, we're responsible for that. And what are they going to look back and remember? What are they experiencing? What's their day-to-day like? And so we work really hard to make sure that they have a normal life. It's harder to not be in LA. Props and all the studios and all the extras, we've had to do our own full casting calls ourselves right here out of Michigan. But it's to make sure that they have a normal life and they go to regular school, they go to private school, but it's, still a normal childhood experience for the most part. So.
No, I think that's super cool. And what I would say is, I've heard more bad stories about people moving to LA than I've heard good ones. Has there been, either in your family at home or your extended family, discussions around the kid component and how you think about it for them? And is there dialogue kind of happening with the kids in that area? Like, just from a parental perspective, how are you thinking about it? No one really talks about this. And I find it really interesting because in a lot of cases, I think folks automatically like kind of point and say, that's not good for kids. But what's interesting being on the other side of it is a really special opportunity for kids to grow and have experiences and develop and et cetera with the right framework. So I'm just curious to see how you think about it.
Going into this, it's always been kids first. And if there's ever a moment, anytime where either of our kids say, I don't ever want to do this again, that would be it, because they come first. And I think what we do really well is set it up so that it doesn't even feel like they're filming videos for YouTube. We take a lot of work. I take on a lot of work writing all of the sketches and producing and directing so that when it comes time to film with the kids, it's dad in a turtle costume chasing them around the house. I do that anyway, even when I don't film. So it's like, I don't know if I froze. Yeah.
You're good.
So, I mean, it's something where we're not your typical vlogger family. We don't like to put our lives all over the place. These are all characters that I created 3.5 years ago, and it's evolved to where Stephanie plays a demon who chases the kids sometimes and chases me and saves things. Braxton, I throw him in the air like the kid. Every time we go to film, he's like, "Are you going to throw me? Are you going to throw me? Are you going to throw me?" Audrey, she's the smart one, and she's the one that always outsmarts me. And it's just like that in real life too. And I'm the clumsy one who always gets the short end of the stick. And I think that when we put all of our pieces together and all of the work behind the scenes so that our kids can just be kids, and we go into those filming days, I think it's actually just a family bonding time that's really, really fun for everybody. And I think looking back on it, our kids are really going to remember those times as being fun, not as, oh gosh, I had to go do this, because we never will make them feel that way.
We're extremely fortunate that our production crew, and it's 2 people that come out. We used to have 4 and decided we could get away with less, but they are phenomenal people. We do have rules that our kids are never alone in the room with anyone, and the production crew is aware of that and respects that. The kids are aware of that and respect that. And it's just to create a precedent, but I actually really fully trust these people around our kids. So they get really excited to spend time with them. And the kids could have a conversation with any adult. It's awesome. So our parents are super, super supportive on our production days. Like for Braxton, who's 5, it's too much to do more than 6 sketches a day for him. So Grammy will come pick him up, or Grandpa Rick, and then they go have a fun day. And then Audrey gets her fun time with them at other times. So they're really supportive of what we do, because they see that like our kids are thriving through it, and whatever they can do to help keep any kind of burden off of them or us, we're really, really fortunate to have their support.
What I found really interesting about your family is just how critical of a role your personalities play in the content. What is that like for you guys? And is that fun? Is that exciting? Is that like, I'm just so curious. It's the coolest thing.
That was actually an intentional rebrand. So back when it was Kevin and Audrey, filming like 2 a day each day. And it was like, this isn't sustainable. This could be too much on her. It was getting to be a lot for him. And so it was intentional to rebrand as a family and, work on that character development. But my character wasn't developed on purpose. The fans thought I was dead.
Yeah, it was pretty funny story. So I was filming with Audrey, and we kept doing all these skits, and we started to grow on TikTok, and there had to be thousands of comments. Where's the mom? Where's the mom? Where's the mom? And for some weird reason, Steph was getting ready to go off to work one day. I said, hey, honey, get in the box with this box real quick. And I'm going to lift it open, and Audrey's going to throw a fruit snack at your head. And then she said,
it was goldfish.
Yeah, she said, okay. And we did it. And I made this whole skit up of how we don't show mommy because she's a demon. And it went viral. And so I just kept it on there. And it's been 5 years later from TikTok. 5 years later, and it's evolved to now she actually is like part mom, part demon, and she can just switch anytime. And I feel like that's super relatable anyway, because it's like, as a parent, like, and mom, and like, did you just backtalk me? Like, no, you're not turning into a demon. But
if you want to meet a demon, I can send you my address.
But that's kind of how it evolved. And also going on what Steph said, when Audrey and I first started, it was mainly Audrey making fun of me, like straight up trashing me in all of my videos. And like, you're like, Dad, would you go please leave for milk and never come back? Like that stuff. And it was super cute. And I got to the point where I was like, man, when she's like 8, which she is now, if she says that stuff, she's just going to come off as a brat. So I figured at that moment in my head, I was like, we need to make a shift. And I had done one skit where I wore a turtle costume, and Audrey loved it, and I loved it, and the fans loved it. And my wheels started turning from that point on, and it slowly evolved to incorporating all of us together. And I think now we're truly the McCartys, a family of 4.
That's so cool. I'm just curious, how did your life evolve after that decision? Like when you guys are out and about, or your friend groups, or you're, introducing yourselves and telling people what you do, like how has that been from, being a, so-called regular family to now having almost like real fame in a way, but also just a totally change of how every day works? Like how has that been for you guys?
That has been particularly huge for me. So when it came time for me to sunset my career, my last, official job was a vice president of sales and marketing for a tech company. Wow. And it was highly stressful, but so many of those skills were transferable to this world, right? Because when we're doing brand deals and marketing and things like that, or if we have to do a casting call, it's like, okay, so that skill set is in order. And Kevin has that level of professionalism from teaching at a private school. But for me, I was gone all the time. I was traveling a ton. I was not able to be the mother that I really wanted to be to our kids. And Kev was Mr. Mom. He was doing the laundry. He was cooking. He was not cleaning very well. But he was doing all these things that, like, as a mother, I actually did want to do those things. And now I have to remind myself as I'm folding the laundry for the 18th time, I wanted to do this. I wanted to be here for my kids. And so now we're able to actually spend that time with our children. We have really close bonds with them. We're together all the time, willingly, happily. So that shift has been huge. And I'd say a couple of years ago, people finally stopped saying, hey, how's those little videos going that you're making? Because that's what they'd say to Kevin. And he's like, I'm not just making little videos, it's a business.
Yeah.
I know that feeling.
Going into friend groups and stuff, my experience is there might be, I can count maybe 3 people that truly know the amount of work that we put in. And so like when I talk to them about it, they're super supportive and it's great in this family. But I think when it all comes down to it, like I am just so grateful for the opportunity that I've been given. Like Steph said, it was a totally different life where I was the one in the house. I was working full time still as a teacher, and Steph was traveling so much. And now I work more than I've ever worked in my life. So many hours a week. Editing's insane. And I wouldn't change anything for the world, because if I wanted to, like we do every week or every other week, we go volunteer at our kids' school at lunchtime. I get to go see my kids. I get to go take my daughter to basketball practice tonight. And does that mean that I'm going to have to work later at night after they go to bed? Yeah, probably. But you know what? I'm definitely okay with that. I think the one thing that, yes, I love how huge and how popular we are, but I'm just so grateful that, realistically, we're just able to be really, really good parents. And that's the number one thing that I want to succeed at is I want my kids to look back and say, yeah, he was on YouTube, but man, he was a great dad.
I think what's interesting about your story is you had that perspective prior to it happening. But would just love to get your perspective on what you think the future looks like for the family. And do you have any other aspirations or different things that you'd like to see come true as a part of this journey?
Yeah, we're, as a brand, we're definitely always trying to figure out a way how to capitalize on where we are and how to grow as a brand. And I think that one of the best things ever happened to us, we met with Paul Tellner from Viral Nation, introduced us to Wind Sun Sky Entertainment Animation Studio. And not only are they a phenomenal company, they're just phenomenal people. And we were able to come up with something pretty unique that is very pioneering, and that is crossover animation, and which will eventually lead into a full animated series. And I think that is something that we're definitely having our foot on the gas going into 2025. This has been about 1.5 years now of work that nobody sees going into all of this. And we want to ultimately, hopefully this is going to be the thing that, leads us to the point where if the kids or if us don't want to go in the social media or don't want to be on camera as much, that this will be the avenue that we can take so that we can still have the brand side, the IP, into the cartoon.
That was actually one of the best things about meeting Wind Sun Sky Animation Studio. They, in our first meeting, they asked what our long-term goals were. And I piped up, like, worried that Kevin might kick me, because I was like, our goal is to make enough money up front so that if our kids, when they're older, they can either choose to be in the limelight or not. And if they decide that this isn't the route that I want to go, we have no reason to push them. We're conservative with our income, and we want to make sure that there's that freedom and flexibility there for them and for us. We see a lot of creators going out and buying up mansions and fancy cars and things like that. And for us, we want to see that light at the end of the tunnel, which just means freedom of choice. Right now we all love it, and Audrey loves it. Her 8-year-old mind would love to go into, film and television and everything. But it needs to be something that's a choice and not shoved into.
And it's different because you don't know what life's going to bring, where their passions are going to end up taking them, how they're going to be as adults. My dad always used to say that, when you turn 14, you leave to you leave Earth and go to this planet, and you're irrational and hard to deal with for that whole entire time. And my job as a father between 14 and 18 is to land you back safely. And we always joked in my family that, at a certain age, when you become a teenager, you go to planet because you don't make sense anymore. Business in the creator world is interesting, right? You have your, let's call it, semi-predictable revenue channels being kind of content monetization and some of the, lower hanging fruit areas of being a creator, especially on the YouTube side. Obviously, you're not long form creators, so that has its limitations. You have the brand endorsement side and et cetera. But from a business perspective, what has that journey been like business wise? And what are the areas that are the most important to you now as you've kind of gone through these early, few years of learning of how the industry works? So like, what are your thoughts on the business side, and where do you want to see that continue to go?
Yeah, well, that's been such a huge learning curve for me. Luckily, I've been able to have Stephanie when she sunsetted her career as a VP of marketing at the tech company to help me. But when she was working, when I first started out, I remember my first brand deal was Baby Ganix. They said, "Hey, we'll give you $200."
It was
$300 for one video. And I remember calling Steph up like, "That's like a full day of substitute teaching. Are you kidding me?" Yeah. And I was like insane. And so like, as it started to evolve, and even while Steph wasn't here, I was taking everything. Like I was like, and like, I was like, yes. Until finally, it wasn't really until Stephanie left her job to come over to actually focus on the business side of things that we were able to truly see, like, we need to bring brands that know what value we can bring to them and know what our worth is. And I think having Stephanie in the works here with us was something that definitely, put us from the creator that has no idea and will accept anything to the creator who still accepts a lot of brand deals, but ones that we know have the same values and value us and work ethic that we do.
I think that's part of the message that we want to get out there too to brands is like, we do want to partner, but we're also keeping our children in mind. There was something being discussed on the table about a year ago, and it would have been a year-long deal, and luckily it fell apart because it would have been so many deliverables. It would have destroyed our channel. It would have exhausted us and our kids. And it's just, that's not the kind of direction we want to go. But again, we have to capitalize on what's in front of us. And thankfully, we've had the ability to work with some really amazing brands out there. And we just want to keep performing for them so that we can keep those going and not feel like there's any need to entertain that other type of route of, just kind of driving us into the ground, because that'll impact the kids, and that can't happen. So
yeah, I think that's one of the hardest things is starting out as a creator, and just creators in general, is like, what price, what are you worth? How do you determine that value? And how do brands determine that without, undervaluing you? And, I think that a huge lifesaver not only was Steph, but was being able to connect with people such as Viral Nation, which allows me to have help where I don't have to be the guy that's like, well, yeah, I probably can do that, when I have somebody over Viral Nation that can completely come face to face with me and say, no, you are worth way more than that deal. And having somebody in my corner that truly understands this industry, because not many people around me and Stephanie understand any of it. And I'm still learning every day, but having somebody like that at Viral Nation by my side is such a huge help, not just like financially, but mentally. It's such a huge help.
Too often, I think what happened, and I'd love your perspective on this, obviously being through it and a little bit more, obviously mature in the thinking, a lot of people at the early days thought that creators were mini Leonardo DiCaprios who were doing an endorsement deal. But I've always had the fundamental belief that you, both Kevin and Stephanie, are a media company that happen to also be the creative talent. And that's where I think the distillation breaks and where people make mistakes when they're working with creators, when they're trying to represent creators. You have the typical kind of UTAs, CAAs, William Morris's, and these big kind of traditional firms that want to get into the creator space, but creator works differently. We're not trying to get, the Tassimo deal because it's a, name, image, likeness of Steph. What we're trying to do is figure out how we creatively put that media in front of the 20 million people you own. How do you think about things like, longer form content creation? How do you think about things like monetizing other platforms? Or how do you think about ventures or potentially creating sellable IP around the brand over time? Like, is there aspirations of how the business continues to kind of build into, what I believe could be, the McCarty kind of family media entertainment company that does a lot in a lot of different places? Is that the aspiration, or is it simpler than that? How are you thinking about that?
That's definitely the aspiration. It was funny to back up on what you were saying as far as like a personality that shows up on camera. Our producer has gone to film school. He will occasionally, he started like our last round of filming calling out the different jobs that we were doing that someone would be doing on set. So Kevin he is directing, he is performing, and that, like, sometimes you have to just give him a minute because he's got to get his head right, because he's not only thinking about the direction and performing, he's thinking about the edit on the other end as well. So the amount of jobs that we're doing, he'd point out that I'm doing, he called me prop master and set engineer. I have to fabricate things. If Kevin dreams it up, I got to make it. So there's all these different jobs that we're doing that go into it. And I think that's so fun. But that's also what makes it a challenge. Would we love to do long form? Absolutely. We would need more help to do those things. So yes, we want to plaster everything we've created everywhere that we possibly can to capitalize on the work that we're doing. And, we look to Viral Nation to help us with that. And I know Paul Townler and the team have a lot of ideas, build it into a Roblox world where, in that world, you can also go into the theater and watch our shorts or whatever is going on in there. So we absolutely do want to do that. It's just keeping in mind there's capacity that we need VN, and so that's what we're working on.
Before you go, Kev, I think one of the things, Steph, to what you're saying is interesting is when the actors union and all them went on strike. You remember that last year? It was last summer, I think. I believe that was one of the biggest mistakes in the world they could have done during that period of time. And the reason for that is everyone underestimates Steph and Kevin's ability. That doesn't understand how it works. Because if I'm filming a show that's going to go onto the Comedy Channel, and that show is going to have 6 episodes or whatever it may be, it's going to cost me just to produce those episodes potentially millions of dollars. And it's not even avoidable. It's not, overpaying. It's just that industry has been around for such a long time that now in order to create anything at all, you have to do 15 check marks and pay X amount of people and things. And then I'm sitting there going, okay, while you're on strike, creators are doing the exact thing on their own. And I would argue, as a YouTube dad and someone who hasn't had TV in 10 years and watches YouTube every night with my family, the quality of what you guys are putting out is the same in my eyes, in the eye of the consumer. I always make the joke, you might like this. I always say when Fast and the Furious hit number 8, I was just like, I'm over it. The entertainment world went from guys racing on the street to guys doing barrel rolls and GTOs out of helicopters and landing in a favela. It's like, So I think they went too far on the production side. And I think the beautifulness of what you guys are doing and creating is at the same time very relatable, obviously a word that's used in our industry a little bit too much, but also at a content quality where people aren't sitting there, Steph and Kevin, going, this is shot like shit, or, I can't watch this whole thing, or, but that's not the case. It's just, I think we have this idea of grandeur of what production looks like in the modern world. And I think creators have just taken it back to, this is what people really like to see. And I think that, as you expand on that, we need to figure out how we do that uniquely so that we don't end up going down the path of traditional media and then having to deal with what that looks like in order to scale. We need to kind of find our own team way of doing it, or our own, there's so many AI tools and stuff coming that I think, Kevin obviously might be able to help with some of the burden of editing. There could be things, but we need to, I always tell creators, we need to figure out how we expand without doing it the way they did it before. So what's our unique creator way of expansion and building on that team? And obviously, as you grow monetarily, making those investments becomes easier. But I so agree, Steph, with that. And it's so cool.
So when I've been watching social media lately, what I'm seeing is fully produced, professional, like sketch comedy groups. I mean, you can tell it is full on production. This isn't Kevin and Stephanie running around with their crew. It's fully produced. And I kind of wondering, is Hollywood now infiltrating social media, and is it a threat to the traditional creators? And I think for some, if they're not putting in a lot of effort, right, there's always people that you can just kind of like talk to the camera a little bit. And there's a whole wide range between us and that type of creator. But have you noticed that? Have you had any thoughts on that?
It's interesting you bring that up. I compare it very simply, Steph, to companies like BuzzFeed, Vice, and some of these big media publishers who have unfortunately kind of filed Chapter 11 and gone away. And the reason for that is the traditional media machine, by the way, is still as big as it's ever been. So that's why they have the resources. That's why they play like they play. Traditional media is still, even though we're winning the eyeballs of the people at scale, and no one can tell me differently, they still are 700 times our size, right? But the way that social media works is not conducive to that type of production. So unless all of a sudden YouTube decides on your second video they're going to pay you $175,000 in ad revenue, you're going to be in the hole, right? So when you think about just basic investment thesis, yeah, we can put together a show tomorrow and use Viral Nation Studios and Paul Tellner's group to create high impact, high velocity, well-produced comedic content for YouTube. But I'd have to find 700 brands to foot that bill, because I know that from a monetization perspective, it would be next to impossible to just get the production costs back out. Never mind the profit that needs to take place and the consistency, right? And then the other thing too that's interesting about social media, and I think you guys are by way royalty in this area, is volume and frequency. Volume and frequency is extraordinarily important, because you can miss. I have so many creators who I'm very close friends with over the years, and they still to this day will text me and be like, Joe, I spent so much money and time on this piece of content and it went absolutely nowhere. And then we were out at the club the other day and I shot this thing with my buddy, and the thing's like the most viral piece of content I've had all year. And I'm like, well, because there's no rhyme or reason. Social is almost like the brain of humanity, if you will, in the West, where every day it's changing, right? So maybe I do want to watch a long-form piece of content. Maybe I don't. Maybe the weather's shit this week and I want to sit inside, so I'm going to watch more long-form content. Like, social's a proxy to the human feeling, not a place like traditional TV or Netflix is, where there's intention. Social moves with how people are feeling. So the volume side is really important. And if you guys remember, during COVID, YouTube went harder with their original series, right? You had original series of Liza Koshy going live, and some of these large creators. They've since not done that any further, and that's YouTube doing it. So, I would say, Steph, there's truly nothing to worry about from an outside in perspective. If anything, the more that happens, the better it is for us, because they're bringing that attention both from a brand perspective and from a creative and talent perspective to what we do. And they're just going to figure out, they'll end up in a meeting one day going, how the fuck does Steph and Kevin do this? They'll be sitting there going like, how are they doing this? Because the model is not the same. Our world is just so different. And, my perspective on the world of creators is it's just a decentralization of media. So if you remember during crypto, everybody was saying decentralization of currency and all this. And at the same time, I was yelling, it's a decentralization of media, for me, meaning creators are the voice of the people. The voice of the people are becoming modern media. That for me is everything, because 7 years ago, 5 media companies ran the entire all of America, 5 of them. Now there's 40 million creators. And by the way, you can't launch a crappy product anymore, because if you're buying something for over $100 and you're not watching a YouTube review on it, you're doing yourself a disservice, right? So creators are the people, the media of the people, and they're supported by the people. Patreon, the views on YouTube, the brand deals, etc. It's like the people's media. So I think the more people try to infiltrate it with the modern media or those traditional tactics stuff, the harder they'll fall on their face, because this whole world is designed for the people working with people and not for the big corporate machine that built kind of media before it. So I think we have a lot of protection.
Love that. Really value
your perspective. And if that changes, I'll text you. Because it could. You never know, right? Like every day I get an email like TikTok's gone. Oh, well, let's have a meeting about that. Then it's not gone. Then this is so we just need to ebb and flow and continue to do our thing in a lot of ways.
Love that. Thank you.
I really enjoyed the discussion. I mean, I'm sorry the first time we chatted was through a formal podcast like this, or whatever we're calling it, video interview, whatever it may be. But I get out to Michigan quite often. I've been there probably 4 or 5 times over the last 2 months. So I would love to come and see you guys. We can grab a coffee or maybe a dinner if you have some time. But I'd love to meet you and spend some time chatting some more. And honestly, thank you for being the first video interview with me. It's really fun and exciting. And thank you for trusting our teams, and thank you for being wonderful, because I can tell you internally at Viral Nation, whenever talent's doing an update for the company, or John, our president, is talking about the business internally, your names always come up in a really nice way. And that's very rare. So thank you for everything and how wonderful you treat our teams. And Viral Nation will have your back until the wheels fall off. So let's kick some butt together.
Love it. Thanks so much, Joe. Seriously, you and everybody over there have just been fantastic. Phenomenal people. And we couldn't do this without you. We're so excited for 2025.